Alright, it's time for the solutions to the arithmetic and geometric sequences assignment. So what you need to do for all these is just kind of describe what the pattern is, use your words, and then identify what type it is, whether it's geometric or arithmetic or neither, and then if it's arithmetic or geometric, get the common ratio or difference. So for this first one, when I look at this pattern here, I see that it's adding 2, and it's adding 4. Oh, sorry, not 2. It's going to add 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So you can, my pattern would be like add 2, add 3, add 4, and I'd probably just say etc. Whoops. And so that's my pattern, which is not arithmetic or geometric because I'm not adding the same number every time. So it's going to be neither, and so there is no common difference or common ratio. Whereas on the next one, I'll notice here, I'm adding 3 every time. I'll write that out for you. Add 3 every time, which is an arithmetic type sequence. And if you have an arithmetic sequence, you can get a common difference, and that is by just taking any term, subtracting the previous one, which will give you 3. And moving on to the next one. So here we have a kind of an interesting pattern. Right here, that's adding a third. But if you add a third to 14 thirds, you're going to get 15 thirds, which is the same thing as 5. So this one, the pattern is to add 1/3 every time. Use your words to say things like that. And so this one, we're adding the same thing. So it's going to be arithmetic, and we're going to get a common difference. Well, the common difference is just what you're going to add every time. So that one's just 1/3. If you want, you can subtract those two lovely fractions there to get your common difference, but it's going to come out to 1/3. This next one, it's looking like we're changing what the signs are. So we have negative, positive, and so looking like we're going to multiply by a negative. Well, from 4 to 12 is times by 3. From 12 to 36, that's also times by 3. And from that to that, it's also 3. So we have to times by -3. So we're gonna multiply by -3 every time. And so since we're multiplying by the same number every time, that's a geometric sequence. And if it's geometric, it has a common ratio. Well, the common ratio is any term divided by the previous one, which in this case is going to be -3. Alright, you do 12 divided by -4 gives you -3. On the next one, let's see, looking at this pattern here. This one's adding a weird amount each time. So this one's like add 12, and then add 20, and then add, I don't know, like 28? Yeah, that's not looking very consistent. Add 8 more each time. Well, something else that I noticed is these are all square numbers. You have 2 squared, 4 squared, 6 squared, 8 squared. Okay, so it's looking like the pattern is you're going to have 2 4s. So it's more like squared even numbers, if I could write legibly. Hold on, let me retry that. Squared even numbers. So this one's going to be neither. So there is no common ratio or difference. The next one, on the other hand, looks like we're going down pretty consistently here. That'd be a subtracting 5. The next one subtract 5, and the next one. So the pattern is to subtract 5 each time. And so that type, if you're going to do the same thing every time, it's just going to be arithmetic. And if you want the common difference, which is what you have on arithmetic. Just figure out what you add each time. Well, that adding bit is -5. You can take any term and subtract the previous one. In this case, it's going to give you -5. Moving on to the next section here. On 7, it's looking like from 1 to 5, you can add 4 times by 5. On this next one, you'd add 20 or times by 5. Oh, look, both of these is times by 5. So, and if you do that, yep, that's the pattern. So this one is times by 5 each time. Sheesh, my handwriting is atrocious. Each time. Well, that's what happens when you write on a flat screen with the stylus thing. And so if you're going to times by the same thing every time, that is going to be geometric. And so since it's geometric, we're going to have a common ratio. And to get that, you can take any term and divide by the previous one, which will give you 5 in this case. Moving on to 8. Oh, we saw this one on the last assignment. You have a central point, and you add 4 dots around it, and you add 4 dots around that. So the pattern is add 4 dots to the leg. I'm going to call them legs. And so since we're adding 4 every time is going to be arithmetic. And that common difference is just going to be, well, take how many is here, subtract how many is here. Well, that difference is just going to be 4. And the next pattern here is going to be heart, add 2, add 2. Oh, it's like it's just add 2 hearts every time. So I'm going to add 2 hearts every time. And then the type, well, if you're going to add the same thing every time, it's going to be arithmetic. And, sheesh, arithmetic. And then, well, if you have arithmetic, you have a common difference, which is going to be 2 this time, because if you take 5 hearts and you subtract 3, you're going to get 2. So there's that. Moving on to the next one. Well, the pattern, we looked at this one in the previous time, as well as like adding another row and a column. Or you have a 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3. And so here I'll list the pattern, the description as add another row. Row and column every time, and that is going to be neither, because you're adding a different amount of squares each time. And the common difference ratio is going to be non-existent. Well, and that brings us to the next one. Well, we start out with 3 boxes, and then we get 5, and then we get 7. So it's looking like the pattern is add 2 every time. Well, that type would be arithmetic, because you're adding the same thing every time. And whatever you add every time is your common difference. So it's just going to be 2. On 12, let's see, pattern. Well, you could subtract about 42, but that's not what happens on the next one. You could divide by 3. Oh, and that does give you the next one, which gives you the next one, and the next one. So the pattern is divide by 3. 3 every time. Well, if you're dividing by the same number every time, it's going to be geometric. And if you want to get the common ratio, pick any term in the sequence and divide by the previous one. So you got 7 divided by 21 is going to give you 1. That should be equals 1/3, which is going to be our common ratio, 1/3. And then on 13, it's looking like, let's see, well, if you go from 4 to -3, that's like subtracting 7. Well, if you subtract 7 again, you get -10. You subtract 7 again, oh, you're going to get a lot of, it's going to keep coming negative, and this one's going to be arithmetic, because you're subtracting the same thing every time. You're going to subtract 7 every time. And if you want to get your common difference, is what you have on arithmetic sequences, you just take any term, subtract the previous one, and you'll get your common difference, which is -7 for that one. Moving on to the last 3 here. This pattern actually did show up on the previous one. If you start at 711 and you subtract 41, you're gonna get 670. If you subtract 41, you're gonna get 629, and so on and so forth. So this one is going to be subtract 41 every time. And if you're going to subtract the same thing every time, it's going to be arithmetic. And, well, if it's arithmetic, it has a common difference, which you just take 670, subtract 711. Oh, that just gives me -41, which is kind of what we expect, because you subtract 41 every time. And that brings us to the next one here. Well, let's see, in the bottom part, it's getting doubled. So you can think of double the bottom, which, if you're going to times the bottom by 2 every time, we're looking at a geometric sequence. And the common ratio, well, to get that, you just take consecutive terms, like 1/4, divide by what's in front of it, and you're going to get 1/2. Well, sweet, so that's my common ratio, 1/2. And then moving on to the last one, let's see. Oh, we're switching signs back and forth, so it's looking like we're going to have to divide by a negative, and that negative is going to be -2. So it's a pattern, divide by -2 each time. So that's going to be a geometric if you divide by the same number every time. And our common ratio is just going to be any number in the sequence divided by the previous one. And that one's going to give you, well, -1/2. So that's my common ratio. And that assignment's done.